Hello, welcome. It's Act 3 Live or Act 3 Life. I'm Judy Reith, and a big welcome back to any of you who are rejoining, and an extra special welcome to anyone who's new on the Zoom tonight. The eagle-eyed will notice we're somewhere else.
I wonder where we are.
Don't know, but we need to give you a couple of housekeeping warnings tonight because it's just us. There's nobody to help with the dog, so the dog might bark horribly, and we might need to sort him out.
He's in severe danger of doing that. So in rehearsals, he was not very well behaved. So he's even worse behaved than Judy is. So and the other thing is the seagulls might squawk.
Yeah, bit of a clue to location there.
And yes, well, we aren't completely on our Todd because our youngest daughter Rosie is somewhere miles away in London, going to slide the slides in when the moment comes. So thank you to her, Rosie. Your slide of you being a dancer is there. Thank you very much.
And in case you've never met either of us either, my name is Judy Reith, and I'm currently married to Adrian. And in a working capacity, I'm a life and parenting coach. So that means that I help people figure out problems in their lives, not in a therapeutic way, but definitely in a problem-solving way, whether it's to do with parenting or growing older, obviously in the Act 3 territory, or it could be career, it could be confidence, all kinds of things. So my job is to help people sort of unscramble their spaghetti.
I am also a coach. My name's Adrian, been married to Judy for 30 long and hard years. Previously, I was in advertising, and tonight we are going to be talking about money and the issues we might have about money in Act 3. For some, it's quite a thorny issue, and it's rather similar in some ways to discussions about death. People often avoid the conversation about money. So it's our view that our quality of life will be severely improved if we are able to sort out our money situation. So that's definitely worth a try. And we're going to ask everybody to mute their microphones. I don't know whether, Rosie, you're able to mute everybody. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yeah, just so that we can have a clean conversation.
Okay, so those of you that were with us last week where we talked about the world and all the issues that bother us with our fabulous guest, Vera, the Zoom of that is up on the Act 3 Life website, so you can see that if you would like to go back and have a look at that. All the videos are up. This is number 12?
Number 12,
12. Yeah. Right, okay. So
we never thought we would be launching our book in lockdown and it will all be done virtually by Zoom. It's a weird and wonderful thing. Can you imagine what would happen if there had been no Zoom when all this happened?
Yeah, and we'll certainly be Zooming going forwards. But you have been in touch, so thank you very much. We absolutely love your comments and emails that come in after tonight and in the week to come up about tonight's topic, money, but also about things from last week as well. And Vera actually joined the two together, so she was talking about tips that we can all adapt to help the world be a better place, and she's joined it with money and created a fundraising page for her favourite charity, the Amos Trust. And instead of giving money or buying her a present, people have donated. And then her son, who's 30 today, happy birthday, Dan, if you're on the call.
Well done.
Hope you're doing more interesting things than this. So Dan's done the same, and between the two of them they've raised £2,000. So
nobody of 30 should be watching this. I think we've got far better things to do.
And also Liz Curran, who always joins us. Liz, if you're there, good evening. Lovely tips from you about legacy, about thinking about how to see what money can do and what money we might have, whether it's £1, £10 or more than that, to give away and see what can happen while we're still alive. And also Steve Nation, who shout out for Steve, who he gives up quite a lot of hours every week to volunteer to help people with free debt counselling through the Citizens Advice Bureau. So if any of you have any debt issues, remember that you can get some free support with that as well.
And he tells me that with COVID, the issues of debt are going to be going through the roof, and I can believe that. So it's put a lot of pressure on a lot of people in all kinds of ways. We're not going to do any debt counselling tonight, but we're going to talk about the more basic principles of money. And this is one of the chapters in our book, which we wrote just for those who are new to us. This book, Act 3, The Art of Growing Older, is a book that we wrote to help people navigate this time of their life, which we say is between 50 and, I don't know, 80, say, because really our generation are living much longer than, say, our grandparents' generation, certainly, maybe our parents as well. And we've got an extra kind of lease of life. It was in a sense that the life was a 3-act play, and now it's become a 4-act play. So there's an extra act being inserted at this stage of our lives when we're actually reasonably healthy and able to do things and full of beans and got some resource around us, a lot of experience, and don't just want to sit there with our feet up necessarily or go on cruises, which of course no one can do anymore. So, so this is about that topic, and money is one of the things which can be a bit of a thorny issue for people. And so the point of discussing it is so that you don't die without regrets. You want to have things, you know, sorted so that it's all as good as you can make it at this stage of our lives.
And not leave a great big mess for your offspring or your loved ones to deal with, which was certainly my story.
Gosh, your parents left a bit of a mess. Yeah.
Yes, on all fronts, certainly. So, Rosie, if we could just have the slide of the tree. We're just whizzing through the key principles of the book, which will work all through the evening. But we based our thesis, if you like, in the book on this tree, which is representing our lives. And above ground, you can see the external things of our physical health, holding up the branches of our tree, which represent things we get up to outside during our days, and then the most important things are the roots of the tree, which are your attitude to growing older, your purpose. Why do you get up every day? Is it just because you've got a full bladder?
Hope not.
Your values, how you go about what you believe is the most important thing to do, and then your key relationships. So when any of those 4 roots are in trouble, they will affect the whole of the rest of your tree. So many of you who've been on these calls will know how much we bang on about those 4 roots. So I hope they are beginning to bear fruit for you as well, that you've re-geared your attention towards those 4 areas of your life. So we're up in the branches tonight and we're looking at money. We're just wondering, when was the last time you paid for cash? Pay for something in cash? If you can just type it in the chat and we'll collect some cash stories. The cash button is at the bottom of your screen.
If you press the button, the cash comes out.
Yeah.
No, maybe not.
Not yet. When did you last pay cash?
I last paid actually Rosie, who's doing the slides, some cash about probably 2 weeks ago when she was going to the shops, and I gave her a £5, but I didn't actually give it to a shopkeeper. I haven't actually seen a shopkeeper for a while, but mostly, yeah, it's been in shops. It's been plastic and the phone.
Part of that's a COVID thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
They don't want to handle it. But in lockdown, there was one of the neighbours would buy gorgeous bread from a baker once a week, and you had to go and collect it. She'd leave it in bundles, all labelled up in the boot of her car. So you'd run across, open the boot, get your bundle, and leave your cash. But
I went across and stole her car, of course, but that was another whole thing. But we won't go into
that's
that.
You. Okay.
So just a bit of housekeeping, just to remind you that we're recording this tonight, and you can go back and see this recording and all the other recordings we've done through our website, act3life.com. If you go to the video page on that website, you'll find all of the recordings. Thank you for the comments that you've put into those recordings. We'll control who speaks, and type in your questions and comments as we go, as you say. As Judy said, and please put your screen on speaker view, which is the top right of your screen, if you could just do that. And obviously please keep your microphone muted to save everybody's ears.
Okay, so just in terms of what we can cover in this massive subject tonight, we will be talking about it, obviously, with an emphasis on Act 3 as we're getting older. And our special guest tonight is a really, really great guy called Andy Brookes. Some of you will know him, who's on the call. He's waving at you now, if you can see in the gallery there. Andy's an economist and someone who's done an awful lot of thinking about money all of his working life, maybe even as a kid as well, actually, but also helping a lot of other people to make good decisions about money. This is absolutely not a financial advice session. We won't be flogging any products or anything like that. It's much, much more valuable what Andy's got to say to us.
And then later on, after that, we'll have a split up into small groups so you can have a chat more personally, more in smaller groups about money. Money is a pretty, I think, for a lot of people, it's a fairly sensitive and personal issue. So you may not necessarily want to discuss it in the chat, but if you do, great. But if not, you can have a chance to do that in a small group. So we'll do that later. And please put your comments for Andy and questions if you have any in the chat, and we'll try and get to those.
I'm just going to see what you've been spending money on today. Local allotment. Somebody spent something on a charity screen. The bike shop. At the chemist,
Steve
delivering
Nation
items.
back in a bike shop. That's a very unusual, Steve.
Eggs at a little shop. Yesterday for dry cleaning.
Peter says 4 months ago was the last time he paid cash for anything.
Yeah, someone's struggling to remember. Yeah, Act 3, loss of memory. Where did that go?
Wow.
Okay, so many of you will know that we always include this wider community well beyond this Zoom meeting of people that are on our minds and hearts that we're worried about, that we miss, that are suffering or perhaps in financial difficulty, given tonight's topic, and that we light a candle to just hold them in our hearts. So Adrian's going to pop round and do that. And also, while that's going on, we always ask you to take care of yourselves. We are not here to just have a light touch, fluffy night talking about, I don't know, pensions or going on a cruise or something. This is going to ask a lot of your heart and your soul to be part of this, which is why we believe you want to be here. So look after yourselves. And if this stirs things for you, then please make arrangements to have a better conversation with yourself and perhaps with someone who'll care for you and listen to you after we're done tonight. But take out of it what really inspires you, and you know, be energized about what we're going through tonight as well, and notice what you think, oh, that might help.
So we're going to start with the poll. Everyone likes a poll. They're great fun. What's your attitude towards money in Act 3, we're wondering. So
we'll give you 3 choices.
We're going to fire this up, and here we go. What's your attitude towards money in Act 3?
So just the first question there, is your head in the sand about it? Nobody will know who's voted for what.
It's all anonymous.
Middle choices, yes, I'm concerned about it. But then the last one is, yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. Okay, so just vote for the first poll if you could.
Well, everyone's doing all of it, I can see, because I think I probably set the poll up wrong. Funny that.
Okay.
Something to do with my age.
Oh, nobody's got their head in the sand. That's a good start, actually.
Very good.
Oh.
Well, the people who have their head in the sand can't actually do the voting on the poll because their head is in the sand. That's how it works.
Okay, so there's a medium amount of concern going on. 47% of you.
So when everyone's voted, we'll show you the results.
Okay, and then yeah, over half, actually, just over half are fine about it. Okay, so well, I'm sure they'll still learn a few more things tonight.
Here are the results. There you go.
Okay. Rough plan, almost there. A few people, only 25% of you are sorted. Nobody's got no plans. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah, great. So almost there and fine about it. But oh, that's good. So, I always knew we were talking to a very responsible lot. So, so that's no surprises there.
Okay. All right. So as we always do, we just give you a few thoughts at this point about our take on the topic of the evening.
Do you remember we had a lovely breakfast with an old man who was really inspiring? Who was that?
Charles Handy, yes. That's his way of giving a little bit of his time, or it was 4 years ago. He would ask you round for breakfast, and it was an absolutely lovely thing to do. And he was so gracious and inspiring, as was Liz, his wife, who very tragically, a couple of years after that, was killed in a car accident. Yeah. But we have very fond memories of our time with him.
So Rosie, could you show that slide of that quote of his? There it is.
There's Charles, yeah.
So we were chatting, we went to chat about our book, and his basic belief is that dealing with money is more about the philosophy of how you go about thinking about money, and not about the money itself, not about economics. And I'll be interested to know what Andy thinks later, because he is an economist, not a philosopher, whereas Charles is a philosopher, not an economist, though Charles did work at London Business School. Yeah, it's an interesting thought, that, and that is very much, we seized on this because it kind of appeals to us in terms of what Judy was talking about, the roots of your tree.
Yeah, so in the same way, when we did the home
Thanks,
evening, we asked you, what is your home for in Act 3? And the same question is for tonight, really. What's your money for in Act 3? Is it for squirreling away? Is it for the rainy day? Is it to give away to your family? Is it to give everything to charity? Is it to make some plans? What is it all about as we get older and can make decisions while we've still got some kind of mental capacity to be able to do that? It's very much linked to our roots in terms of, as we just said on the poll, what's your attitude towards money and your values about what you think is important when it comes to using your money. If money is worrying you, then what are you going to do to start to alleviate those worries? Because they just grow and they get more scary. There is a lot of free help out there, as well as help that you will have to pay for, as I'm sure you might be aware of. But doing nothing is going to create more of a burden for you and those whom you love.
And I'm sure that we all know a lot of people, couples, for example, young couples who have a bit of a shock in the first couple of years of their marriage when they discover they've got different values and attitudes with regard to money. And it is hugely divisive. And I think one of the things is that, people, certainly Brits, don't talk about it very much, money growing up. Whereas, for example, as I understand it in the States, correct me if I'm wrong, people might often say, how much do you make? It's not the kind of thing that certainly a lot of the people I know in this country, in the UK, would be, that's not how they'd be thinking. And certainly in my family, we didn't talk about money very much at all, apart from giving it away, because my parents were very into that. They didn't talk about anything else.
Yes, they're inherited taboos around money. If you just think for a minute about what your parents said or implied around money usage, you might want to type that in the chat as well. And I think that these things can go very deep, and they can become scars that we carry throughout our adult lives. I know that my parents were incredibly careful with money, and my mum would say money is to be divided into 3 S's, which was spending, a third for spending, a third for sharing, and a third for saving. And I can't shake that off. And I'm 60 this year. I still think of any money that comes in as, where's those 3 S's? But these things feed into... I thought
the 3 S's stood for shit, shower and shave. But or was that a different Zoom meeting? Oh, okay.
Yeah, in our house. Okay, it does. Shh, you wake the dog up. Anyway, so apart from that, it feeds into what we know, and I'm sure many of you know, are things called limiting beliefs, that are messages, loud messages in your head that tell you things like, I'm not very good with money, or money really worries me, or you should always be generous. Things like that become directions of travel and are difficult to shake off. Although you should be generous is quite a good one, really.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, they're not all bad, but beliefs are... It can be either, can't it? Just a question of whether it's helping you or not helping you.
If it's getting in the way, definitely. Yeah. So one of a funny story we had about our financial planning was that we realised that we
made a will, didn't we? We were very good. We made a will.
Yeah, about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And then about 17 years after that, we got it back out.
And we realised that actually the will only pertained to 2/3 of our family, because we'd had another child several years before, and she didn't exist. Rosie, you're on the call.
Yes, it's her.
It's you.
Yeah.
We'd forgotten to include you in the will, which was a bit of an oversight.
And we'd asked my sister and her husband to be guardians to our children if we were both taken out in a plane crash. And then we realised that since we written out, they'd had 4 children. 4 children
since then. So
it was highly out of date, and we did get some financial advice at that point. And we still do. And we quite like the guy we see. He's very funny. He's great. We give him very strict instructions not to be boring.
So, Rosie, can we have the fair equal slide? This is an illustration from our book, which is something that we really like, which is, 3 people looking over a fence to see something interesting, doesn't matter what. So to be equal, they've all got the same size box. But and that's equal, but there's a difference between equal and fair. So on the right-hand side, the little person has got 2 boxes, and the big one has got none. And so this idea of everything always being equal doesn't always work for us, in our view. And we would say to you, maybe think about being more creative in terms of what's fair. We remember seeing a really interesting documentary on television where there was a discussion with a family, and it was agreed by the 3 daughters, I think, that they would, the parents would give a disproportionately large amount of money to the youngest child because she didn't have any children and I don't think, had a partner. But the older 2 had, and got both kids and partners and houses and stuff. And they benefited from the parents doing all kinds of helping out and supporting childcare and stuff over the years. And so they just effortlessly and joyously agreed that the younger one should have a disproportionately large chunk of their parents' will money. Thank you, Rosie, for that slide. And that's great. And those kind of conversations are by no means, impossible. We know people who've done similar things in different kind of ways to have creative conversations about money. And people sometimes are a little bit too kind of, oh, I'm not sure we could bring this up, and oh, how are we going to do that? And we'll get into that, I think, with Andy, in a minute. So
we love the idea from the Jewish community as well. They have a saying, which is, it's better to give with warm hands than with cold hands.
I.e. dead hands.
Yeah. Which is lovely.
Yeah,
it's better to give with warm hands. So what will you do with your warm hands before it's too late? So we've got some tips as well, just quick tips that saying hello to the reality of your monetary situation is really important, whatever it is. It can change, you can get help. It doesn't have to be so worrying and terrifying. And I think it's great that many of you on the Zoom tonight said that you're feeling okay about your money situations, but perhaps you know other people who are struggling and being a bit head in the sand.
And you might be able to come alongside them and help them write stuff down, get a fresh perspective on, what they're seeing, because very often with clients, you and I will get people to write down what's going on, the reality, in order to separate themselves from it. And it really helps people feel lighter and more able to attack the problem when they get it down on a piece of paper. And
that will help you with planning, which we will talk about a bit tonight as well, just by getting it all out. But looking at all the big things you can possibly think of, what money is coming in, what money is going out, what money would you like to think about giving away? What money might you need for the rainy day? We've had a few people in lockdown who've said to us that this is the rainy day, where their monetary situation has changed drastically. And obviously one of the reasons for doing this tonight is because we know lots of people are really, really worried about what's going to happen next with the recession. So I
don't think my generation, I'm 65, I don't think we've known a rainier day than this. And I think so. I don't think we've begun to see. Andy would be interested to hear what he says. I don't think we've begun to see it yet. Really, the reality. What it's going to be like.
I think it's time we got Andy in. Who is Andy?
Yeah, well, Andy is an independent consultant. He now works mainly in the not-for-profit sector, and the church helps out there. He currently chairs the board that oversees the £2.5 billion Church of England investment portfolio. Previously, he was an economist and a central banker at the Bank of England and the Reserve Bank of New Zealand and the Confederation of British Industry. So that's a pretty amazing bio, Andy.
He's also amazing on the dance floor.
So unmute yourself, Andy. And tell us, Andy, what shapes your interest in money? So where does all this come from?
I should just say I will spare everyone the dance floor impression. Don't worry. It's not going to.
Oh no! Please don't.
A much later night.
Okay.
And isn't it interesting? When you were picking a few bits out of the CV, I wanted to say it wasn't as boring as it sounded. Okay, it's been quite fun so far. But Adrian, you asked the question, what shaped my attitude or approach to money? And I think it's a really good question to ask ourselves. For me, probably 3 things. I see in the chat, there's quite a lot of reference to parents. And certainly for me, my father has definitely done it. He's a classic Yorkshireman. If I could have £1 for every time he starts a sentence with "my problem is," then I would be able to wipe out any debt that had been going at any point in my life. I was reminded that, so to give you a sense of him, when I graduated, I managed to get a job, and it was that early 80s, very difficult time. Got a job, and he drops me at the train station, and we're standing on the platform with him, and we meet somebody we know, and they say, "So Andrew, how long did it take to get your job?" At which point my dad says 22.5 years. Gives you some sense of his attitude towards money. And go on, go on, show this photo, Adrian.
So talk us through this, Andy.
What's going on here?
Yeah, so what we've got is that's my dad. I know you wouldn't believe that I had that much hair, but I did, it's true. And we are at the top of the steps in the Albert Hall, and I've just graduated in economics. And my dad has come down for the ceremony, and he has just given me a piece of paper, and he said, "Son, go and stand at the top of those steps in front of the Albert Hall. I want to take a photo." And what he had done and what you were observing was the cost of my education. So I had the privilege of going to private school, and he had added up exactly what it cost the whole way through, including student grants, any of that. So the first thing I think that shaped both my interest and my approach has been my dad's, definitely significant. Second thing, I got very interested in economics and had the privilege of working in some good places. Not that economists were always particularly good at thinking about practical side of money. It just seemed important, it's interesting, and that kind of got me. I had an inspirational economics teacher, so I got into that. And then the third influence, the third thing that's got me interested in money, I guess I'm a follower of Jesus, and he talked a great deal about money. In fact, a lot more about money than almost anything else. And I thought, well, if I'm going to take that seriously, that's going to have to be shaping. Now, the big challenge, of course, is could the voice of Jesus be louder than the voice of my dad, which plays quite loudly in my head on occasion.
Wow, that's extraordinary. So,
thank you for that. I love that photo.
Well, he's still got it. It's in his. I was up with him just this last week because he's 93, still alive, living on his own, and basically I've been doing a combination of cutting his toenails and sorting out his finances. And when we were sorting out his finances, I'm in his study, and he's got that photo, which is why I dug it out. I was able to dig it out.
Amazing.
I wonder if anybody else has been cutting their parents' toenails this week. But, I think, because it's a very Act 3 thing, isn't it? That often we've still got responsibilities towards the layer above us. Not for us, all our parents are long gone now, but you've still got your dad, haven't you? Has Caroline got anyone left? Your wife, Caroline?
No, she hasn't.
On that side, yeah. So with Act 3, Andy, what would you say are the important things that we need to think about with all the experience you've seen of people at this stage in their lives?
Sure. Let me highlight 3 things. I think the first thing is actually to do the thinking. And you said, and I think you mentioned in the book, that there's such value in actually addressing the issue of money. And I think one of the questions that's always interested me is, why is this so difficult? And I think there's a bunch of reasons to do with, sometimes to do with our time horizon, because many of us are just not planners. A very good friend of mine, who may or may not be on this call now, I remember he went to see a financial advisor on a Saturday morning, and the financial advisor said to him and his wife, "So what are your plans?" To which they answered, "We're thinking of going for a fry-up." Which is not quite the time horizon that the financial advisor meant. So some of us, we just don't plan, but also the money stuff is complex, and it's complex culturally as well as sometimes being complex in content. We're all looking for the trusted advisor, but trust is very difficult in an area where the person who provides the expertise to you, they know more than you do. And that gives us an exposure that makes us very nervous. When we go and get our cars fixed, if the person who's doing it says your carburetor needs fixing, what are you going to do? You're going to say, "No, it's not. I know better than you." And so in economics terms, there's an asymmetry between of what they know and what you know, and that makes it difficult. And also, you only really do it once in terms of this Act 3 planning.
Yeah, that's
so
interesting.
So it's always much difficult. If you do something repeatedly, you learn. But this, we're going through it once.
Do you not think people go back to have a review?
Well, they do, but the thing to do that is you've got to have kicked it off.
Yeah.
And I think the point that you make about writing it down is really valuable. I think the other thing to do is just recognize what's going on in our culture, because there's so many things that I've noticed. I think you make a comment in the book that if you want to learn about the culture that we're in, just look inside yourself. And some of the things that we're told about money, that this is going to make you secure, that this is absolutely yours, you have absolute rights to this, that it will make you happy insofar as you can be happy in this world. And also, there's another one that money measures whether you're winning or not. And all those, I note in myself, all those 4 things. When I still play sport and I get together with other, mainly men of my age, and there's a little bit of that, it's one way. So noting what's going on in ourselves that comes out of our culture. And then I want to come back to your mum's, Judy, because I think some of the things that she's highlighting, so I'd go ESSS. So put an E in front of it, which is your earnings. So in terms of Act 3, we're either at the end of our earnings or we're coming to the end of it. And thinking hard about what does that profile look like and what does it need to look like is very important. The savings bit is a crucial component. I don't know how many of you will have investigated ethical saving products. Adrian, you were saying, Adrian, you just say what happened to you when you raised this 35 years ago.
Well, when we chatted earlier in the week, I told you the story that when I went to chat with my financial advisor, the first one I got, which was like 35 years ago, I said to him I wanted to put my money into things that weren't doing harm in the world, and he looked askance at me. He didn't understand the question, the idea of ethical investment. Yeah.
And so, and that's changed tremendously just in the past 2 years, where that is much more possible in a way it wasn't. I mean, we're not talking here about spending, but that's a key component, and we can get into all sorts of helpful or unhelpful patterns in regard to spending. And then the one I'd love to chat a little bit about, which I think is a big Act 3 one, is the giving question. Where there's 2 aspects. One is I'm just a huge believer in giving money away, and you've talked about that. I think that's great. And pushing ourselves, partly because it breaks some of these taboos around money. Money will not make us secure. It will not make us happy. And those idols, almost idols in our culture that we're offered, giving money away somehow breaks their power. Because we can be so anxious about money, and I think that giving can do something to break that. But then there's all sorts of issues for many of you. Many of you will have children and possibly children's children, and the whole intergenerational thing is fascinating now, because we, as Adrian and Judy have talked about, we live much longer. So some of us have still got parents alive at a time when we would have been thought of as old, and yet we have parents. So I've been sat down with my dad doing his money. One thing that Carla and I spotted a long time ago, because of this phenomena, basically inheritance has got to jump a generation. So if we're in a privileged position to inherit anything, and we don't have immediate need for that, either to establish our income or to pay down debt, and some of us will be in a position where we really need it for that. But if we don't, and we've got kids, it probably just needs to jump to them, because capital movement down the generations is one way of trying to address the heinous inequality that's going on in the housing market, whereby basically our kids have been stuffed to our, I mean, it doesn't feel like a benefit to us, but boy, is it a cost to them. So that intergenerational transfer, that's something I'm really interested in. Think about that. And one other thing, if I might, just before you come in, Judy and Adrian, is what are the ways that we can recycle money in our extended families and in our communities? I remember many years ago, working with a friend who hadn't got the money. And I said, well, why don't you just write to 20 people who you know and say, do you have £5,000 or £10,000 that you could lend me for a period? And you can have a discussion about the interest rate. There's all sorts of possibilities of doing loans like that. We've done quite a bit of lending of money where you've got friends, or you might be borrowing money at 18%, and you will be in strong relationships with people who are getting 0.25% in the bank. Or flip it round, if you've got money in the bank and you're getting less than 1%, you've got friends and family members in your extended network who are paying 18%, who are just being killed, and the opportunity to do some redistribution. Now, you need to think hard about it, but I'm a massive fan of that. I'll stop. I get excited.
And to do that, I mean, that implies a community and a network of people who actually talk to each other about such things, doesn't it?
Well, and trust.
It does. Well, both those things. And I mean, if I had a piece of advice, it would be talk about this stuff. Yeah. So, we don't talk about our relationships, and it's brilliant when people challenge us and ask us, how is, if you are in a relationship, how is your relationship? And I know that with me, I've given permission for a couple of my bloke mates to say that. But with money, wow, we need to have the conversations with others. Otherwise, that anxiety is not dispelled. And even you were recommending writing down, just doing a simple write down what you'd like to do with your money, how much you've got coming in, and then sharing it with someone for a bit of advice.
There's an interesting comment on the chat that does it affect the relationship if you've loaned them the money?
Well, I think that's a really interesting point. So there is something about power in lending money. Let's be really clear. I mean, in the Lord's Prayer, it talks about forgive us our debt.
Yeah.
There is a real theme there of debt and slavery. And when you are in debt, especially non-housing debt or debt, it feels like slavery. So there's a power thing that really you need to be handled really carefully. I mean, what we've done is try and be very clear up front. We do not want this to affect the relationship. That's absolutely axiomatic. And then to spell out very clearly how it's going to go. What's going to happen if it goes wrong? One tip would be, don't lend money that if you didn't get it back, you'd be dead. Don't do that. Only lend money when you know if it went really badly wrong, you wouldn't die. You wouldn't be completely penniless. But I think your point about trust, Judy, is important as well. But it extends the boundary of trust. When we've done things with our friends and family members, it actually builds trust. Yeah. When you successfully break this hoodoo that we can't talk about money, and we certainly can't.
Yeah.
With it.
And what helps most when it comes to making money decisions, Andy?
Like between what do you do if you are in a partnership, or and you're disagreeing, or else if you're on your own and somebody else in your wider family has strong opinions about how you make money decisions?
I mean, this is going to sound like your life coaching, but a bit 101, which is it's have the conversation. I mean, that's what we've tried to do with our kids. Now, some people won't want to have that conversation and will find it so uncomfortable, but at least put the offer out there. We found with our children's generation, they're much more willing to have. You need to be a little bit careful how much you share with them, because it can be overwhelming for them when they're in a different sort of stage of life. So I'd encourage you to do that. I'd encourage you to put the goals down. I mean, we just said, what are the things that we want to do? We want to make sure that we're not skint in our retirement. We'd like to do whatever we can to put this intergenerational inequity with our children in terms of capital transfers, what's possible. And then thirdly, we're going to give away as much as we can. But even those high level goals kind of helped.
It's good to have those principles. If you don't have any, it's like anything. If you don't have a plan, you can't change it. And it's better to have something than to no plan at all. We're probably going to say thank you to you for the moment.
Stay with us.
And we're going to split people into groups, and
it's all random.
And I'm going to do the random splitting up. The dog is running around the room. And
so we'll just tell you what's going to happen. You'll just have about 10 minutes to have a chance to answer a very simple question, which we'll put into the chat as well, which is just talk freely. What feels important to you about money in Act 3. Yeah, just have a chat, try and give everyone a chance to voice their opinion. But what feels important to you about money in Act 3?
We're going to randomly split you up into, there's probably 3 or 4 participants per room, and then there will be you'll get about a minute's warning to come back out. Okay, so here we go.
We'll put it in the open all rooms. Okay. Chat. Where's the...
Do you want me to join the breakout room, guys?
Yeah, if you want to, Pete, Andy, yeah, that'd be great.
What do you prefer?
Yeah, that's fine.
Go for it.
That's fine. Yeah, thank you.
He's got steps. Okay.
How's the dog?
He's got a stone from outside. There's a big chew in the dog cupboard. Oh yes, we're going to give, yes, because we can send a message to all of the rooms. Yeah, we can send a message. You know, Vera said, can we have a bit longer?
I've just muted you, so remember to unmute yourselves when you come back on.
Now we want to get some feedback on this.
We haven't got time for goats again, have we? Or do we?
No, I think we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can tell people to look in the book about
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah.
Rosie.
No, we want some feedback first, not straight to goats. I'm sure I know that name, Nicky Moore.
Secretary of State for Education.
Hello, is everyone back? I'm hoping everyone's back.
Can you wave at us? Yeah, you're in. Okay, thank you. Any thoughts, comments, what came up in your chat with one another? It would be really good to hear how that was, if you've got any brainwaves that have occurred to you as well. I think it would be very useful to hear that, and perhaps if anyone's got a question for Andy, as he's our man with all the experience tonight, that would be great as well. You're very welcome. Andy's up for that, aren't you, Andy? Yeah.
A lovely comment from Linda Jones. I know she's in America. Yeah. My father was great with finances, but never showed me because I'm a girl. Now I'm handling it. And yeah, wow, I'm sure that's a fairly common thing. Well done, Linda. And Nikki says, our maternal grandparents provided us with holidays and extras. Money was tight when we were young. And Patricia's saying, my parents managed money really well and insisted that we children save some money from a very early age. Security was the most important thing for them. Having savings gave them that. Yeah, not everyone can manage savings even.
Okay, so I think while you're sending in your thoughts and ideas, we realise that it's been weeks and weeks and weeks since we just very quickly showed you our way of setting good goals, which is in the book. It's about the goats.
So Rosie, if we can see the goats,
which we think will help you if you want to make some practical plans and thoughts and move your money questions on a bit.
In Ethiopia, there are certain goats that jump into trees. So we thought, since our model is a tree, we should show you goats in trees. And the acronym is based in moving on from SMART goals, which people have heard about in business circles, to goats.
We like goats. One of the things that is so fundamentally important is that whatever goals you are setting, they must be true to who you are and match your values. Otherwise, you're not really going to make the work to get them to come to fruition.
Exactly what Andy's been talking about earlier on, which is examining and looking inside yourself and seeing what is genuine for you.
Yeah. So your goals need to be genuine, and then express them optimistically in positive language for the O, and then A is achievable. So if you're hoping to make billions in your Act 3, well, maybe you will. But if that actually becomes a goal that is then just depressing because you're never going to get there. And then time bound. So if you're going to start having a planning conversation, when is that going to happen? Is it Saturday afternoon? You have to be as specific. There we go, as that. So that's all in the book a bit more, but if you're going to make some goals, then please be as clear as you can that they match your values and that they're well thought out. And I think, as Andy was saying, you know, if you're in a partnership and perhaps you've got very different values around money, then please keep having the conversation as well. Now, what's Thomas saying? What do we say to the expression "lend a friend money"? You lose your money and you lose your money and you lose a friend. Not quite sure what you're saying there, Thomas.
Thomas, are you there?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Should we unmute you, Thomas? Perhaps you can say what you mean there.
Where are you?
Can you unmute yourself, Thomas? Are you prepared to tell us more about that? Okay. Hello.
Hello.
There you are. Hi, Thomas.
Yes, hi. Yes, hi, Adrian. Yes, it's Barbara who is my technician on this one. No, it's an expression I've heard and sadly experienced a lot. Is if you lend money to a friend, you lose both your money and your friend.
Oh, it's kind of not what Andy was saying.
That isn't what Andy was saying, which is why I'm asking the question. But sadly, in my experience,
So
both my own personal experience and what I've seen others, that
Yes.
is suddenly a fact. Oh well.
Yeah.
so Andy, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a risk, and you need to be open-eyed about the possibility of not being paid back. I think it is a risk. I think that's why I made the point about don't lend so much that it would kill you. I think the thing about the friendship, I mean, that's because it is going to hurt that. I understand that. I've done it with lots of friends. We haven't had one go badly wrong yet.
I'm wondering whether, Andy, partly it's about the technical term, it's about contracting. It's about the agreement and about clarity and really clear communication. Is that?
I think that's a really good point, Adrian. I mean, I'd encourage you to write it down on one side of a piece of paper. This is exactly how we're going to do it. I mean, that's how we've done stuff like mortgage our house for our kids, and written down with them, this is how this works. So it's absolutely clear. But I'm sorry, Thomas, that stings if you've gone out on a limb and it's gone yuck.
I've just remembered, Andy, when I had my first flat, or the opportunity to buy a share of the flat. I think Graham is one of my old flatmates is on the call here. Your dad, Graham, who's sadly dead now, but he lent me the money for the deposit, and then that was 40 years ago. I thought that was a wonderful, generous, loving act, and I don't remember that there was a very complicated agreement, but it was definitely an agreement of some sort. But no, that got me started on the housing ladder. So that was terrific. Yeah.
I think anything like that as well, when you look at what's happened to the generation of kids, for those of us who've got kids, so kids now in their 20s and 30s trying to get started somewhere, and they've gone to university and accrued, if they have huge debt, their situation is so radically different to what we were doing at their age. And some people really struggle with that, because there's that sense of, we're spoiling them, they should work for it, we had to work for it, they've got to work for it. But actually, I'm interested, Andy, that tonight you're saying we should be thinking about jumping a generation here to deal with some of that terrible inequality that has come about through no fault of their own.
Yeah, I think it's not just buying them a beer. I think there's more to intergenerational attempted equity than that, though I would recommend that as a strategy.
It starts with a beer, but probably not when you're writing the agreement.
Yeah, that's right. I think the one with the education one is really interesting, because you may have kids on a 1.5% loan. If you've got kids who are on the cheap loan, for goodness sake, don't pay that back. And opinions vary on the very expensive debt, whether you should pay that back. We have actually done it with our one child who was in that situation. I know some economists would disagree and say, if they're lucky enough to earn that much, you shouldn't. But staggering around with a debt rate that's going up at 3% over the RPI, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So
we're getting towards the end. We've got 5 minutes to go.
Yes. Any more last closing thoughts, ideas, quick tips?
Anyone who has to say something?
Anyone done any online shopping today? Anybody who's got any thoughts? Next week, while you're thinking about what's coming in, as you know, we will always say it's really important that you think about what you've heard tonight, and if there's one thing that you feel, yes, I'm going to go away and do that, then please put it in the chat or send us an email. We're always really interested in your actions. It's Act 3 as a result of being on the call, whether you've heard something from Andy or from one another or from us. We remember last week actually that the do you like small groups or not was an absolute 50-50 split. So that's why we didn't do it last week. We did do it this week. So we hope that was useful to you as well.
Thank you for all the people who've written lovely reviews of this on Amazon and other places. We're really grateful to you for those, and for the extraordinary feedback we've had. Linda Jones kindly said to me in an email, "Thanks for helping me find my map for Act 3." And that's why we wrote the book, is to help people get a grip on the stuff that we're talking about. So very grateful to you, Linda, and everybody who has supported the book. And thank you to Andy, particularly for being such an eloquent, gracious and inspiring guest today. Thank you. We applaud.
Well, you're very welcome. It's been lovely, lovely to be with you. Thank you for being part of the conversation.
Amazing. I think as well, we're just going to flag it now that we're going to meet next week. We'd love you to come back, and we're going to be looking at what things really help your tree and what really hurt your tree, and also looking at transition and why does Act 3 sometimes feel so weird and so difficult and troubling, but some good thoughts around that we will be doing next week, and the week after that will be our last Act 3 Zoom for the summer until we break over the summer. Don't know what we'll do in the autumn, we'll have to see.
The last one we've saved, and this is no surprise if you can hear me over the dog chasing his tail, literally there. Actually, we have Andy and his wife Caroline to thank for our dog, which we were inspired by their dog. But that's another whole conversation. So the last of our Zooms, the week after next, will be about death. And it's
a good one.
Rather like money, it's a subject that a lot of people try to avoid. But it is very much worth our consideration. And I think, obviously, it would be quite nice if all of us had a good death. So we're going to be asking how, as far as we're able to, we can do what we can about that.
Yeah, so that's in 2 weeks' time. And that'll be it then for the summer. And we're very...
And if nobody shows up for that one, I won't be surprised.
They might have died.
Yes, well.
Let's hope not. Okay, well, thanks ever so much. And as always, do send us your thoughts and comments, how this has been for you tonight, and what are your actions, what you're actually going to go away.
Send us an email. You know where to find us. act3life.com is where you'll find us. And all the videos are up there if you want to catch up with them. And it's just been really great having all of you join in to give your wisdom and your love and your interaction on these Zooms. It's been an extraordinary feature of this weird lockdown period. It can't go on forever, the lockdown, I'm pleased to say.
No.
And our Zooms won't go from forever either. You'll be pleased to say.
Yeah.
So
anyway, we look forward to seeing you next week, and have a great week in the meantime. And
thank you for watching.
Yeah, think about your money. Cheerio.
Cheerio.